Now let's turn to events yesterday in Parliament. The Public Order Bill, the government's attempt to crack down on what it sees as disruptive protests, has suffered a series of defeats. The House of Lords voted against police being able to stop and search people without grounds for suspicion, and they didn't like the idea of outlawing marches where people walk too slowly. Susan Hume now reports.
The government argues it just wants to stop people gluing themselves to tube trains. But many peers from all parties and none think ministers are going way too far.
We're not in Iran, we're not in Russia. We're actually meant to be in a democracy.
The Green Party's Lady Jones, who's been on a lot of demos in her time. And then here was the former Conservative minister and last governor of Hong Kong, Lord Patten.
I think it's astonishing that we're proposing in this country the sort of thing that we would denounce if the Chinese Communist Party were doing it in Hong Kong.
Well, the government's aim is to stop protests like the ones from Just Stop Oil, which have brought motorways to a halt. So, for example, ministers want the police to have the power to stop and search people, even if they've no suspicion they're up to anything, in an area where there is or might be a protest. They'd be looking for paint or glue or padlocks. But an independent peer, Lady Fox, was worried that people who were just going on a demo could be randomly stopped.
It implies that going on a protest is preemptively seen as something dodgy, and I therefore become sceptical when the government assure me that this won't have a chilling effect on people going on demonstrations.
Another independent peer, Lady Meacher, said there was little evidence that existing stop and search powers were very effective.
So the idea of extending these powers to stop and search people in case they have a placard, a piece of paper, is completely, in my view, and utterly disproportionate.
Someone of the rank of inspector or above would make the order allowing stop and searches in an area for an initial period of 24 hours. But ordinary police officers would then be able to stop and search anyone. Labour's Lady Chakrabarti thought there was a problem with trust and referred to the sentencing that very day of a police officer for multiple rapes.
There will be lots of young women, not least today, who are particularly concerned about being stopped and searched by the police. That is not a happy thing to have to report, but that, I'm afraid, my lords, is the reality.
Several peers pointed to figures showing young black men were disproportionately stopped and searched. The former Metropolitan Police Chief, Lord Hogan Howe, is generally in favour of law and order measures, but he too was a bit worried about this one, given the history of stop and search causing racial tension.
I think, particularly in London, stop search without cause has got such a bad reputation that it's probably not wise to extend it. And one of the reasons for that is that you've now got many grandfathers and grandmothers who were affected by it in the 60s.
So, did anyone speak up on the government's behalf? Well, there was the Conservative former Justice Minister Lord Wolfson, who thought people were overreacting. There were limits to the powers.
Let us please be clear what these clauses actually do. There is no general power of a constable to stop and search without reasonable suspicion. There is no general power to do it anywhere, for any time, in any circumstances.
But, speaking for Labour, Lord Coker wanted to scrap the powers.
It's a totally disproportionate reaction to what is happening, but the consequences are serious and dramatic and potentially catastrophic. As so many have said, at a time of fragility of confidence between the police and certain communities, it's like pouring petrol on the flames.
The Minister, Lord Sharp, could hardly fail to read the room. He began with a sigh.
I do understand the strength of feeling expressed by all noble lords today when speaking to these amendments.
But he did think police needed to be able to search for things like glue and chains.
Stop and search is a vital tool used to crack down on crime and to protect communities, and we see it as entirely appropriate that these measures are extended to tackle highly disruptive protest offences.
But many peers disagreed, and the stop and search without suspicion powers were defeated by a big majority of 75. The government can try to overturn that when the bill goes back to the Commons, but that's not true of another defeat. Peers also threw out plans to stop disruptive marches, for example, if protesters walk too slowly. For technical reasons I won't go into, ministers will have to give up on that one for now.
Susan Hume reporting there.